Yes, here we go. April 24th meeting highlights are in your, draft highlights are in your packet where we talked about the different bills we discussed. I'm basically going to go over that here. And then that document is followed by bill versions. Now, because our meeting took place on April 24th, and because the preparations for this meeting require that the meeting agenda and materials be posted 10 days ahead, or not the materials, but the agenda be posted 10 days ahead, at least 10 days ahead. This, the materials here are the same as the materials that we got on April 24th. So there, everything that happened on April 24th, I mean, it's in the highlights, the versions of the bills and stuff. I mean, they may not match. So I have an updated list that I'm just going to read from, if that's okay with you, that I made a little chart for myself to report back on the discussions of the committee. On AB 1991, this is a workforce, it's a bill to require workforce data from all licensees, demographic data. It does, the bill analysis talk about how scholarships and things can be allocated, but information that may not be mandatory for licensees to provide is not available to the boards, and it includes demographic information. It also includes things like just sexual orientation, that applicants or licensees and renewal applicants are required to provide information on their demographics, their background, a number of factors, including sexual orientation and things like that. So we looked at that and we thought the first version of the bill said that it was required of all licensees. And then they added some amendments to say it's required of all licensees. It's still required of all licensees, but then an amendment has been added to the bill that says you can't deny somebody a license for not providing it. So it's a very interesting, the language is interesting because on the one hand, some of the concerns are, somebody might not want to have to be required by law to disclose their sexual orientation. For example, I'm a gay man, and I don't know that I really want to be compelled to do that, required by law, especially if I was secretive about it or had, whatever. So obviously that's a concern. We decided that we would take, we thought we'd watch it. We didn't want to feel we should take a position on it, because understanding that the demographic information is important and valuable, and we have our own issues. We don't require email addresses. Or the whole issue of acquiring an email address means you don't have email addresses and you can't do the work that's important for your board. So, so we got it, that we supported the idea of gathering that information and collecting that information, but want to see how that's operationalized in that bill. So we felt support or opposition were not the way to go, that watching it would be the way to go. Oh, also in our board materials, the manuals, the booklets that we had over here, it includes the support, oppose, unless support if amended positions in the manual. So if you wanted to review that, do we have a page for, do you have, it's one of the documents that has a page where it talks about the different positions that the board can take on bills. And I can't, yeah, if you could look it up, that's just so people know what there are certain positions that the board can take on bills. So that was the recommendation of AB 1991 was to watch. The recommendation for AB 2269, this is a bill to, by the way, 1991, back to AB 1991. I checked it last night. It was passed through appropriations on last Wednesday, May 1st, and is going in for is being sent to us a third reading. That's the status of that bill. So it's moving, it's page 17 of and which document is it? The board manual or? The board members guideline and procedural manual, page 17? 17. So if you want to look at that, that's maybe helpful. The second bill, 2269, Flora. It's about board member qualifications having to do with public members. the current law says that a public member is excluded from a licensee relationship for 5 years. That it takes, after 5 years, you could become a public member of a board, but you cannot, if you have a relationship with a licensee within the last 5 years. They want to move that to 3 years. So to shorten that period. We felt that the committee wanted to recommend to the board to support AB 2269 because we felt that 3 years was sufficient to protect the consumer from any conflicts of interest, that it's recruiting public members who are knowledgeable and everything. Just recruiting public members is a challenge. And public members with past links to the profession have knowledge of licensee issues that might be helpful as well as being a public member. So we thought that support, we'd recommend support. Did we want to go through all of these, or do we want to? We just go through all. Should I just go through all of them and then AB 2442 SBIR Healing Arts was about expedited licensure. This is one of 3 expedited licensure bills that we reviewed. This one is to provide for expedited licensing for people demonstrating intent to provide gender-affirming healthcare or gender-affirming mental health care. There are some other categories of people who have expedited licensing to achieve various goals. And so we thought we should watch this. We support the goals of the bill, which is to make sure that provide care in an area that may be underserved. On the other hand, demonstrates intent. Their implementation, how it's implemented, matters, and that we thought watching that would be important. Certainly, it's important for the board to watch it because the board will be implementing it if it passes. AB 2725, Rubio and Muratsuchi, teacher credentialing of occupational and physical therapists. This bill has passed the Appropriations Committee again last Wednesday, May 1st, and is moving to the consent calendar. It's an administrative services credential for occupational and physical therapists in schools. This board has taken a position of support in the past, and we on a similar bill in this bill, and so we recommended support for that bill. And the reasons would be to support the consumers of OT services in the schools by creating a credential for the therapists, OTs and PTs. AB 2753, rehabilitative and habilitative services. This is a durable medical equipment bill. It was sent April 17th to the appropriation suspense file. That's where some bills never move out of that file. It eliminates annual dollar caps on durable medical equipment coverage and eliminates restrictions on provision of medical equipment free to use in the home, these are two issues. I see a lot in my practice. We recommended watching that one. It would affect certain OT practitioners. I'm watching it for my personal job, but just the full disclosure. But we didn't recommend taking a position on that since it's an insurance issue. AB 2862 is the second of the expedited licensure bills that we reviewed. It passed the Judiciary Committee on April 23rd with a 9-2 to 1 vote, and it had been referred to Appropriations. This is expedited licensing status for people demonstrating intent to provide African American. Sorry, that's not right. I mistyped. It's intended to address underrepresentation of African Americans in professional occupations by providing African American applicants seeking licenses, especially applicants who are descended from a person enslaved in the United States, with expedited licensure. We again support the goals of the bill for the underrepresentation of African Americans in professional occupations. The implementation issues that are worked out would be very relevant to us, and we would recommend watching that bill. The On the second page, we have AB, oh, you don't have the pages I have. For my segment, AB 3127, McKinner is the reporting of crimes mandated reporters. Now, Assemblyperson McKinner also had AB 1021 last year that's was on our list. Seems to have sort of replaced that bill. It passed appropriations on April 10th and was sent for a third reading on April 11th. It updates what healthcare practitioners are required to report to support services and law enforcement. This is a bill about how certain crimes are reported to services versus the police or both. We all felt that it was a much improved bill over AB 1027, representing some of the same issues and concerns we talked about last year regarding AB 1028. I'm sorry. And we did feel that we wanted to watch that. Its co-sponsor is Futures Without Violence, and it's opposed by the California Sexual Assault Forensic Examiners Association. So we'll see where that goes. But it seemed to have a nice, interesting. You can read the language. It seemed to be thoughtful about how to do a warm handoff to services, and also report to law enforcement in appropriate situations. I think we thought, feel free to speak up, committee members on that. AB 3137 is one that we thought should be removed from the list. It didn't it was a non-substantive change to another board's name in the Business and Professions Code. We thought it might end up in, becoming a different bill that was relevant to our practice, but like a placeholder bill, and it doesn't seem to have gone anywhere. So last thing checked last night, there was a note from February 17th saying it may be heard on March 18th, and it obviously wasn't. So I think we should strike that from the list, AB 3137, and we don't need to watch it. That was not what I think. It's what the committee talked about. SB 1067, Smallwood Cuevas, Healing Arts Expedited Licensure Process, Medically Underserved Area Population. This is the third of the expedited licensing bills that we looked at for people demonstrating intent to practice in a medically underserved area or serve a medically underserved population. It was sent to the appropriation suspense file on April 22nd. So we'll see if it emerges from that. We should watch it, see if it emerges from that, because this board would be, if it does and is passed, then expedited licensing would be on our agenda for that. SB 1290, healthcare coverage, essential health benefits. It has to do with the essential health benefits in California, which do include OT services. It's basically developing a new plan, a standard for the essential health benefits for health plans in California. They currently do include OT services. It's a watch. We just felt it was a watch. And then SB 1468, Ochoa Bogue, we thought that should be removed because the language was changed such that it was no longer relevant to OT. It was a bill that was completely changed. It's about prescribers of narcotics, so it's really outside of we have nothing to contribute to that. Okay, just to recap, I'm just going to check my list again. We have AB 796, which we just discussed, the athletic trainers bill. We're waiting for language from that. AB 1028 is the bill, one of the other bills that's, as I said, has been replaced. I would like to strike that one because it has basically been replaced by AB 3127 by the same author. Same author, same topic, better bill, I think. I think we all thought it was a better bill. So the recommendations were to watch all the bills on, well, I'll just say, watch AB 1991, watch 2442, AB 2442, watch 2750, AB 2753, watch AB 2862, watch AB 3127, watch SB 1067, and watch SB 1290, and then consider positions of support for two bills, AB 2269 and AB 2725. And then, of course, we will also want to see the language of the athletic trainers bill if it emerges from the meeting. If they decide to move forward, because the bill has to be rewritten in mid-May.
President Bookwalter,
Yes.
what is the recommendation for AB 1991?
AB 1991 was watch. Do we want to talk about that?
No,
I mean,
what I'm looking for clarification on is there language that the committee is requesting that the board discuss or what?
sure, let's look at that.
In looking at the notes, it looked like that one.
Rachel, do we have copies of the bills available on for the screen? Not right now. Okay. Let me just look.
On your minute meetings, it says the committee agreed to recommend that the board seek clarification on the language from the authors. Is that's all that they're requesting?
Yeah, we did talk about that.
The reason we said watch was the clarification between, they said it's required it was required to provide these information. But then another sentence they're saying the boards cannot deny someone seeking licensure if they do not provide this information. So there's a conflict there, or discommunication or confusion there. And the other thing that was I brought up was that it's more likely that we are not going to get information, that people are not going to tell us their gender identity, sexual orientation. They may not tell us their race, ethnicity. But on the other side, I know board member Witzelsbach brought up the whole idea for this is because we want to collect data to provide services and scholarships for underrepresented populations. So we get that it's a very important bill and that why this information is being requested, but it still doesn't make sense why it says they're required to provide this information, but then also if they don't provide it, it's not a requirement either because we can't deny them getting a license if they don't provide it. So that's what we wanted the clarification in, and watching it to make sure that they hash out that
Yeah, if you look at the bill, it's the last page of the bill at the very top of the page, the very last two paragraphs. The two paragraphs read, F1 says, a licensee or registrant shall be required to provide the information listed in subdivision B as a condition for license or registration renewal. And section 2 says, notwithstanding paragraph 1, a board described in paragraph 2 of subdivision A shall not deny an application for license or registration renewal solely because the licensee or registrant failed to provide any of the information listed in subdivision B. So they say two different, one says the registrant shall be required to provide the information, and the next paragraph says, but the board shall not deny an application of license because somebody didn't provide it. And so we thought that the board might want to ask how that works.
Thank you for that.
I don't think the committee felt able to bring to the board that could be a question to the authors, I think.
Well, and one other interesting arm that I would add to that is this question of identification has come before this board before. This was last year. And remember when we had a public speaker come before us who identified how they would self-identify themselves, he, she. Well, in reality, Breeze does let them identify as they are. He, she, and there's we can ask Heather Martin to weigh in, but I believe it's,
Yeah, there's a third.
there's a third aspect that was added to allow the person who doesn't identify as other. So all I'm just sharing is great on the watch, whatever your committee recommends, I'm behind. But I think in reality, in our DCA, they do identify, and I think they can't pass by it. I mean, we also have Melissa Gear here. I think it's mandatory. So yeah, let her weigh in.
Yeah, do we have Heather Martin? Do we have information about that?
Sorry about that. So we do, I'm going to pull up the meeting materials and I'll forward it to the moderator. We got that list, and I believe it was at the November meeting when you had the list of all the different demographic questions that are currently asked, both at time of submitting an initial license application as well as at renewal. There is a decline to state option that is currently made available. I will forward that to, I need to find it first, and then I'll forward it so that that can be shared with you. Does that work?
May I direct a question? Yeah,
Does that, she's asking. if-
that actually works. Was that a result? Do you remember when we had the meeting and we had a public member come before us?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Okay, so yes, it was longer ago than, yes, August, yeah, Dominican, I think it was. I'll look up that meeting.
Can you look up what the option is? And can you
Yes.
secondly identify if it's mandatory or if they can bypass it?
Yep, I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that would be appropriate for voluntary. It allows people to report voluntarily. And then this bill seems to be trying to get more require people to do it so they get more information, a better quality of information, I think was from the bill analyses. So those people who aren't are not so voluntary about disclosing are required by this bill, but they cannot be denied licensure if they say no. Maybe a decline to state would be an option in this. Depends on how it's implemented. So that's why we were thinking that could be a question to the author. It could be, well, the board could just decide to watch it and see how it plays out.
And I guess where I was, again, wherever your committee wants to go with it, I guess where I was going with my questions is, in reality, if it's happening already, your committee might not even have to say anything. Legislation's going to be what it's going to be. But that would be up to you.
Well, actually, now it's up to the board. Because that's
Okay,
what we're
so then-
reporting. It's actually up to the board.
So then if you're looking for a supportive watch, then I agree. And do nothing else. Yeah.
Does any other board member feel that we should ask the authors, or that watch is sufficient to see how it plays out?
I think considering it's on a third reading, I mean, I'm hoping that they look at it again and that through that third reading, they see the issue
Yeah.
that could potentially be interpreted.
I
you know.
think in the initial meeting, Linda Doe pointed out that they didn't have that italicized paragraph. It was just requiring, and that was alarming. And then that paragraph was added by maybe our second meeting, or by maybe the meeting itself, because the version we got had we saw the earlier version without that paragraph saying a board shall not deny. And once we saw that, we thought, okay, well, they are trying to address the concern that we had upon first reading, that it would be mandatory. So that's where we kind of waffled about a little bit about how to proceed.
President Bookwalter, if I remember correctly, the individual that came before us also was appreciative of the two ideas we had shared, which I mean, we can watch, but one was having the option of other, and the other was having the option of negating all of it and just saying to, what gender do you identify with? As a one question versus man, female, and other. I mean, they said anything that would allow a non-binary kind of view would be very welcomed. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along those lines.
Yeah, so are you in support of watching this, Sharon?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, Jody.
We have asked moderator David to actually start uploading those bills that you requested.
Oh,
Can we tell
thanks.
him, do you want them all or do you still need them? I don't hate to have him do that if they're not needed
No, I
any
mean,
longer.
the versions, a lot of them moved on Wednesday, and they have different versions than we
Yes,
have here.
yes.
Because actually quite a few, quite a large chunk of them were were heard in committee Wednesday, and I don't feel like.
We can tell him to.
Yeah, don't do it because
Okay.
they're not current,
David, I
right?
hope you can hear that. We appreciate your willingness to do so. And we sent you 5 separate emails, so we don't want to waste any more of your time. Please cease uploading.
Thank you, David.
Thank you,
Got it.
David.
Are we, so we're going to watch that. We're ready to move on from that one. Do we want to talk about support for AB 2269?
Richard, Heather Martin has her hand up.
Oh, hi, Heather.
If the moderator would let me share, I have the information that was provided regarding the HCI collection data. And I can share that. I'm sorry, I only see it in a Word document. I looked for the PDF. Would that work? Okay, I can share my screen now, so just one second, please. So here we have, this is the demographic data that's collected by the Department of Healthcare Access and Information. So previously there were only 3 options, and then this was updated in 2021 and added unknown as well as added non-binary instead of simply just the unknown. That was one thing I believe you asked about. Here are this is the statute. Down at the questions, they all have a decline to state. So these are the current questions, again, that are asked at time of submitting an initial license application. I'm sorry, the text seems so small. But then again, so I think, was this question only about the gender or? Because we have.
So, it was a question I asked Heather to answer. President Bookwalter asked us what the board wanted to do. Did we want to go back to the author's office? So if you're looking for a response on that, based on Heather's answer, I don't need you to clarify with the sponsor. I think that our application lines up, whatever the outcome is. But again, that now at the pleasure of the rest of the board, but that's where I'm at.
And thank you, Heather. We were just, obviously in section B, there are 14 different questions, 40 different things. Anticipated year of retirement, area of practice or specialty, city, county, zip code, date of birth, educational background, gender and gender identity, gender identity, hours spent in direct patient care, languages spoken, national provider identifier, race or ethnicity, type of employer or classification of primary practice, work hours, sexual orientation, and disability status. So any one of those that a person would be concerned about disclosing would obviously could prevent licensure if it hadn't been for this last amendment to the bill. The ones that are most likely to, we just focused on gender identity, and sexual orientation because they tend to be, and disability status. But it could be disability status, obviously. If someone does not want to disclose that, the zip code and the date of, maybe the date of birth, maybe you want to shave a few years off your date of birth. But I mean, anything that somebody would not want to report, or would you would, I mean, we have to, would it be mandatory? I think people would have privacy concerns. Um, and somehow would have safety concerns on some of the questions. So anyway, that's where I was coming from. It wasn't really just gender identity, but I think that we focused on that because it's one of the things that people are less likely, perhaps least likely to be willing to disclose on the list.
Right. So
Yeah.
yes, so for example, these questions that they're not asked for their date of birth because we already have that information.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And so the question, all these questions listed here, starting on, sorry, the box is in the way, starting on page 3, those are to be compliant with all these questions. Oops, sorry, that HCI requires. And the part about the not denying, this is the part I believe you were talking about, that is that, again, if they provide something, then we can't use that against them to, discipline or, try to revoke their license.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Heather, where does this information live after someone renews their license? Does it stay with the license? Well, it can't just stay with license. Do you just pass it on, or do you keep it as well?
Yeah, they do bifurcate it. I'm looking for where it says you can't tell who it is.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's in aggregate form. So, you're not going to know Christine Whittlesbach and your answers. Instead, you're going to know OT and your answers and your zip codes and your degrees.
Gotcha.
But on the plus side, we're going to know how many OT licensees have a disability, or how many OT licensees
Right.
speak certain
And
language,
this-
all the aspects. So
Yeah.
They choose to answer.
if they choose to answer.
Right. But also it's not, for example, this only pertains to online renewal for those few handful of people who still want to submit a paper application and a check. Obviously they would not be collected here.
Oh,
Their data would not.
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what I can do is, if you would like, I can reach out
Oh,
to.
so that population is currently excluded?
Well, this is required collection at time of online renewal.
Oh, online renewal. Okay.
And then the same questions, but slightly different, like year of retirement's not asked at initial license application. Right. And then the other thing is we had different categories for the workplace categories. We had different categories than these. We had to change our categories that, like, the board, came up with to put into Breeze. And when we stopped collecting our own data and to comply with the HCI requirement, then that shifted the data we collected. So, like, the workplaces identified here, they changed.
Okay.
And
May I
again,
ask-
this was all, even the languages, this did not come from us. This was driven by HCI's data collection.
Right. Okay, thank you. Can we see if anyone in the public would like to speak to this bill, AB 1991, since we've been discussing it? It seems reasonable to ask the public if they have any thoughts on the watch position of this bill, or. David?
My apologies, Mr. President. I assumed
Okay.
that we were taking somebody in the room first.
Oh, yeah, there's nobody in the, there's one person in the room. Hi. She didn't seem like she was gonna.
Fair enough.
Interested
Fair
in
enough.
contributing.
In that case, we are open for public comment on the bill. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen.
And
Dial
David,
in
I'll try to do better, David. Be
Uh,
clear.
No worries. Let's see here. We don't have dial-in users, but we do have mobile device users. So if you're having trouble finding that, hand button, please hit the ellipses button. That's the dot, dot, dot at the bottom of the screen. Let's take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. So it sounds like, all right, so AB 22, should we continue talking about? We don't need to take a vote if it's a watch. So we'll just we'll just ask the committee to continue to watch. We would, if we wanted to support, and that was the recommendation for AB 2269 Flora about the public members. And what does the board think about a support for that, the committee's recommendation for support of that bill?
Richard, you may want to just summarize again what that bill's all about.
Yes, 2269, wait. Misspelled. 2269 reduces the exclusion from eligibility. People are excluded from eligibility for being a public member of if they have a licensee relationship within the last 5 years, and this bill would change it to within the last 3 years. So it'd shorten the exclusion period.
I agree with the position of support.
Thank you.
Are you looking for consensus or would you like a motion?
I think we would need a motion
Okay.
to support.
Board Member Pavlovich, did you want to make a motion on that?
Sure. Trying to think. I move that the board moves in favor of supporting Bill AB 2269 Flora, board membership qualifications, public members
From 5 years to 3.
from 5 years to 3. Mm-hmm.
Second.
We have motion from Dr. Pavlovich, a second from Ms. Miller, and any board discussion? Hearing none. Any public comment in the room? Seeing none. May we have public comment from the WebEx, David?
Yes, indeed. We are open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, please hit the dot, dot, dot. That's your ellipses button if you're having trouble finding that hand. We're going to give everyone just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. May we have call a vote?
Board Member Cabrera? Board Member Miller?
Yes.
Board Member Palovich?
Yes.
Board Member Witzelsbach?
Yes.
Secretary Doe, yes. Vice President Marcos?
Yes.
And President Bookwalter?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So we're in support. So we'll instruct the executive officer to write a letter of support for AB 2269 or inform the authors or however we do it. Regarding the 3 expedited licensure bills, AB 2224, if we consider them as a group, do we want to just simply watch those? Or is there do we want to discuss those further? Is everybody okay with just watch on those? Okay, the teacher credentialing, AB 2725, that was one where we had a position of, a potential position of support, a recommendation. AB 2725, the teacher credentialing, administrative credential, services credential for OTs and PTs working in schools.
Yeah,
Discussion?
I think OTAC is on board with support with that too. So I think I would like to see it supported, a letter of support.
Is it usual and customary that when we support something, we have to send a letter?
That's a good question. I don't remember. It's part of the manual probably. Usually when we have concerns, we submit a letter saying, I think, do we send, that's a question for Heather Martin. Do we send a letter? Would we do support or we just somehow register it in some other way? Yes. Thank you.
Yes,
yes, we
do.
Because from the occupational therapy community, the legislators have heard a lot on this. So I just was looking at staff resources, but if we do that, we do that.
Well, but it's different, right? From the association and the OTQ
Right.
and the licensing board.
But wouldn't they see from, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to know if we have to say
Sure,
we're
sure.
supporting, here's why, but
Yeah.
okay.
I'll make a motion for the board to support this.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion from Christine Whitlisbach, a second from Sharon Pavlovich. Any other board discussion on this support for this bill? Public comment in the room? Seeing no public comment in the room, could we have public comment via WebEx?
We have a new motion on the floor. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. And for our mobile device users, if you're having trouble finding that hand button, please hit the ellipses button. That's your dot, dot, dot at the bottom and cycle through one of 3 pages to find your hand. Let's take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Let's call the vote.
Board Member Cabrera, Board Member Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Pavlich,
Yes.
Board Member Whittlesbach,
Yes.
Secretary Doe, yes. Vice President Marcos, and President Bookwalter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're supportive. And I'd like to instruct the executive officer and staff to write a letter of support for AB 2725. Does the board wish to just continue take the recommendations of the committee? We don't have minutes to accept because we only have highlights, so we can't like adopt the minutes or accept minutes. But we can, if you support the watch positions, should we just do that? And do we even need a motion? We don't really need a motion for that, but I just want to get consensus on that. Okay. There one more aspect of our legislative and, well, 2 other issues with the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee. One, we did not include in the agenda here the 4 compact bills that are in California at the moment. There are 4 licensure compacts bills, and they're not listed here. We're not able to discuss them at length except as part of our discussion from the report on the meeting. I can tell you what they are. One is the AB 1328 Gibson. It's a cosmetology licensure compact sponsored by the State Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, the board, which I thought was interesting, within the Department of Consumer Affairs. It had, but that's dating from 2023. It's apparently, I'm not sure why it's still appearing. There's been no formal opposition. The last action taken was nearly a year ago. So that one, I'm not sure what the status of that is. AB, if you look online, it just says the last action was in 2023. The second one is AB 2051, BANTA. It's the Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact. It is, which is called the SPSYPACT. It was co-sponsored by the Steinberg Institute and Mental Health America in California. It's opposed by the Board of Psychology in California. In a letter on April 30th, or as of April 30th. It did pass Assembly B and P on April 16th, but it was opposed by the Board of Psychology on the 30th, and then on the 1st of May, was sent to the appropriation suspense file. I did notice that it had a cost of $200,000. There's a range from like 180 to 225, something. They had a range in the analysis, and also plus 25 to 50K. So it's probably somewhere in the $225,000 to maybe $275,000. There was a cost to it, so that's why it's in appropriations. And it's now in the appropriation suspense, so we'll see if it emerges from there. AB 20, another bill is AB 2566 Wilson. It's a compact for the counseling compact. It's called the counseling compact. It too went to the appropriation suspense file on May 1st. It is sponsored by the California Association for Licensed Professional Clinical Counselors. There was no opposition that I could find, and it had a bill of $1,179,000, a potential cost of $1,179,000, and was put into the appropriation suspense file. I didn't get all the costs for all the bills. I just got those because they were in the appropriation suspense. I was wondering if that might be just trying to get clues on what it was. And then AB 3232 DALA is for the licensed registered nurses and licensed vocational nurses nurse licensure compact. The last action was sending it to BNP on March 11th of this year. There was no analysis in the in the LegInfo website. So I don't, without asking, we wouldn't know where it is. But I just thought I'd make you aware of those and those bill numbers so you can check yourself on leginfo.legislator.ca.gov if you're interested in following compacts in other professions in California, since we don't have any other licensing compacts enacted into law. And we have been interested in that for OT in the past. Final issue is the plans for the committee and the athletic trainers bill. So the athletic trainers are going to meet in mid-month, as we've talked about, with the authors that sponsors the bill, and to see if it can be rewritten into a new version. Do we want to have a board? We maybe need to call a board meeting after that to review the legislation. We could do a committee meeting. We could go direct to a board meeting. What is the will of the board on that? A committee meeting and a board meeting would be 2 meetings, whereas we could just do an emergency board meeting. If the OT board is involved in that, we could probably justify an emergency board meeting because it has such an impact on the board, and if there's timing of a hearing or something. Is that not correct?
I think by emergency, you mean an additional meeting as opposed to an emergency for huge public safety impact type of situation under Bagley Keene.
Could I ask Heather what I'm sorry. I'm maybe using the wrong term.
Yeah, because I'll say
You're talking
special
about a
meeting, that might just
special
mean
meeting.
additional.
It's
Special, not
a
additional.
special
board
meeting, a
members.
special
Okay.
meeting. Sorry, I was using the wrong terminology. I know Heather would know.
And so Heather, this would be a special meeting, not simply an additional meeting?
Well, yes, it would be additional, but insofar as if there's not enough time between when the language goes into print and the committee deadline to get it out, it might not be able to meet the 10-day deadline, which is why it would be a special meeting.
Perfect.
So it'd
That's
be
what I
an
was looking for.
additional one because it hasn't been scheduled yet.
Correct. Yeah, but our
But a special,
standard additional has 10 days notice, and then the special has less than. So that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Special
we
meeting.
we don't know when and if the new language will come out. So if it's in between board meetings, and we may need to call, and there's a decision coming up in the legislature that would benefit from information that the board could provide, then we would want to call a special meeting. And it kind of just depends on when that language emerges. We've been expecting it for a couple months now, and it hasn't come yet. They'll know more after this May meeting. With BNP.
President Bookwalter, to your original question about to the committee or to the board, I would just weigh in if it were, usually I like things to go to committee and get the input of more practitioners. On this particular topic, it's been before this board so many times that I don't know that, at least from my lens, I would say it's unnecessary. Again, it would be the will of the board, but that's my response to the question you asked.
It's not necessary to go to committee, you mean?
to go right to the board. Yes.
Yes, it should go right to the board, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I thought you, I think we're on the same page
Yeah,
about
I think
that.
that's what the committee decided. We were
Yeah.
gonna make the recommendation that if this came about, that we just have a full board meeting because we've dealt with this for a long time.
Yeah, and the board has to make ultimately a decision anyway, so.
Yeah, just take out the middleman.
Yeah.
Or middle people.
That concludes my report. Let me see if there's any public comment. There's none in the room. Do we have any public comment via WebEx?
We are once again open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button. For our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, the dot 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 at the bottom, in order to find your hand button. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, moderator. We've concluded item number 19.
And Bookwalter, can I ask a question really quick?
Yes.
Is this a good place as a reminder? Aren't we moving agenda item number 11 to 20? And I only ask that because I think I know of at least two public members that have been holding on to talk about ad hoc committee supervision standards update. So I don't know if that's might be a heavy one. I don't know if we wanted to cut that first, because I think that you had said that at the beginning. We were going to put it at either 19 or 20 and then finish
Yes.
off. So
11 is item 11 is what I was going to move to next. Is that what
okay.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who's waiting. I thought, Board Member Miller and Committee Chair, would you be willing to report on item number 11?
Yes. Thank you, everybody. First off, drawing your attention to item number 11, the first thing I'd like to point out is that we have in this particular committee, we have assembled some of our, there's a representation from almost every single academic area, and they have just been a wealth of knowledge. They've provided a lot of input. This was the first meeting of this group after they'd been appointed and took an oath. Prior to that, as you know, this was originally with the executive committee, and we had had a couple of meetings. Essentially, what we went over, I will tell you that it all came together, and then I'll go to where the recommendation is. But originally, when we were asking for input last year, we were looking at the language was related to 4180 and 4181. At one point, the committee was working on one set of language and put that forward to the board, and then realized in the middle of doing all that, that with the language within 4181, I can't remember which was which because we've gone so deep into this topic, that we then put that forward. We then started to look at that as a committee because we knew that we were going to have to bring that language back. Essentially where we are is now that we've brought this entire group together, there's been comments and feedback to our particular group about some of the language. So this committee is going to look at both of them as a whole, as well as any of the additional language where supervision is mentioned, where OTA is mentioned. We're going to go across the board and make sure that everything we apply is just applied consistently as a package for the board to consider all at once. And so that's the direction of where this committee's going. We expect that we will be looking to we will be having a summer meeting, and then I'll be able to figure out more of a cadence of where we're going from that. The other thing I will let you know is that we had a public comment that came to the meeting, and we very much appreciate public comment, but because we are reaching out to so many of the masses, I just have one last statement to share on the public comment, if I may. We serve, our primary purpose here, we serve, on behalf of the governor of the state of California and those that have, and we are pointed directly to the consumer. We also know in that particular process that we are beholden to our public. We're all in roles where we listen to our public. What we'd equally ask is that our public review our minutes and really review our minutes and see the dialogue that's taken place amongst board members, so that when you bring to us your suggestions, you're not just bringing to us problems that we've already addressed in ad hocs, problems that we've already looked at deeply, but if you are reopening, and certainly I don't mean to sound so prescriptive, let's start here. You can send your letter in however you want. It is much more helpful to the ad hoc committee and to the board if you submit a letter with your suggestions for solutions instead of just identifying the problems for us and restating. So for example, here's a clear example of that. The ad hoc committee had exhaustive discussions over the ratio 3 versus 20 in terms of the levels. We had experts in the room. We had people who really broke it down for us exactly what they were doing. And then yet a letter came to us many months later with lots of feedback about the ratios. And so certainly the public gets to do that, but we're also trying to move language forward. And so if we could just know that we're meeting on this and for a very long time, and we also would just ask you to look at our minutes. I also would just like to, we do have the fortunate, if I may just turn it over to Board Member Pavlovich, if she'd like to weigh in, because she serves on that committee. Do you want to add anything, any of your thoughts before you go to public comment?
Well, thank you, Board Member Miller. I think you covered it very nicely. It's been a very robust discussion with so much participation from the public, ongoing edits, updates, thoughts, with more people chiming in every time we have a meeting. And as you said, and I'll reiterate, the power comes from many voices, so we can build a narrative that's powerful, the most powerful for the consumer, and make the best informed choice as a board. So with that, I thank everybody who's partaking in this part to give feedback, because it's super important to help guide the direction of the board.
Thank you. And then the only last thing I would conclude with that's really come up, which will be interesting, is it's really been a very fascinating deep dive, because we do have people who are experts in understanding ACOT language much more than, that is not the lens and the hat we're wearing on this board, but we use that as a guiding post. We do plan to have someone from ACOT come to our ad hoc, so that would be open to anybody, and you would come in as public members, but we do want to let you know that that was a suggestion. There has been a reach out by staff, and we know that, and the head of ACOT is willing to come and talk to this ad hoc committee. So we'll look forward to that. And then we also know that in working with this committee, that they also understand that the primary purpose of being on a board committee is to really help us to get the language into a regular, to approach it with a view of protecting the consumer. So I think it's been a real learning experience. We appreciate the expertise that they're bringing, and I think that they're really going the distance in what we have to lead with. So good things to come. Thank you for that is my report.
Thank you for your report. Very good. Do we have any public comment? In the room, I do not see any public comment. How about online? Do we have any public comment?
We are open for public comment on agenda item 11. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button. That's the ... at the bottom in order to find your hand button. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. And it looks like we have a request from Ada Boone Hurl. Hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, Ada Boone Hurl recently joined the committee. I just want to express my gratitude for the patience and ongoing diligence that has been given by the board in this conversation. There's a lot of nuances, and there's been a lot of feedback at a lot of different levels of the conversation for a variety of different reasons, be it access or understanding what was going on, or a few other things that prevent hearing comment from the public when it would be have helpful to have been sooner. So I really, really want to express my gratitude for the diligence and persistence that the board is putting towards this. It is I approach it in the view of the protection of the consumer. I secondarily, as an educator and a program director, do also look at it from an access. If we constrain our access too far, then does that become a consumer protection issue, in that if we limit the number of practitioners? I very much appreciated the conversation, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to participate in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ada.
And it looks like that. Oh, I almost spoke too soon. We have a second request. Penny Stack, hold on just a moment. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And in the meantime, if anyone has the desire to speak up, raise a hand now. I promise it won't get tired in the next 3 minutes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and I want to echo sentiments of appreciation for the board on your patience and latitude to allow the deeper dive of discussion. I agree it's with Dr. Pavlich. It's been a very robust conversation. The only thing I would like to add is to the conversation, and we've brought this up in an ad hoc meeting, is just taking a look at the consumer. I'm also a capstone coordinator at Loma Linda University, and academia is considered professional practice area. And with that said, I really think it's mindful to consider the student, the OTA and the OT student, as a consumer when we're looking at protecting consumers, because they are there under the practice of the academic, I can't even say the word, of the occupational therapist who's instructing them. So that's what I wanted to share. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Penny.
And just a perfect example of the type of caliber of committee members we have. If I may, Vice President Beata Marcos also is part of that meeting, and I just did you want to say anything before we close the report?
No, it's just that I'm looking forward to our next meeting, and so we can bring some, substantial things to the board. And I'm looking forward to meeting somebody from ACODE who can clarify many questions that we all had.
Mm-hmm. And if I may, I just want to illuminate the value that Vice President Marcos has been bringing to this committee, because she, having a child, is also a consumer of occupation. Well, it's not that your child is, but you've been able to use that as examples when we were talking through certain things. So it's actually been really, really helpful to have that outside view. So thank you for that. That's a report.
Thank you. Do other board members have a question? Any questions? All right. I think I don't think we need to go. Do we need to go to public comment one last time? And
I believe we are finished with public comment for this
Great.
agenda item.
Wonderful. Thanks to the committee for its work. I look forward to the recommendations that will follow. All right. Let's take we have a bio break. It's time for a bio break, 10 minutes, please. And we will return at 2:50. Okay, 2:55. Just make it even. Welcome back to the May 3rd CBOT meeting. We finished up we're now at item 20 on the menu, on the agenda. Discussion and possible action on amending Business and Professions Code, sections 2570.18, 19, and 32. Please refer to your packets in section 21. Heather Martin, would you like to introduce this section? Should we?
Yes.
That would be helpful.
Okay. So here are some staff proposed edits to the BNP code, either on recent issues, or also since there was a suggestion to one, we're cleaning up the gender issues as they come along. This is not being done throughout the Practice Act, only as it comes up. So about midway down on the page in section 2570.18, C in green for the current language was strike through and then highlighted yellow, the new proposed language. Also further down the page in sub H. This though is not a gender one. This is, it's probably a bad page break, but insofar as I believe Dr. Stack mentioned earlier in a public comment about, academia is professional practice. The current language in 2570.18H says that the educators must be licensed. And my suggestion is it be replaced with maintain a current license. And I think you might need to go, oh, there you go, current and active license. To clarify so folks are aware that it's not just a requirement by the board's Practice Act, by the ACODE guidelines, but that license must be kept current so that people are not placing it on an inactive status when maybe taking a sabbatical and then returning to practice and not changing it over to active status. Also so that folks don't let their license lapse for other practitioners. That's called unlicensed practice, and that seems to be an ongoing issue. And right here in sub I, I've proposed the same edits for the OTAs as well. So it's probably you can see a little bit better here. So the language in for H and I, H is for OTs, I is for OTAs, and that was one of my suggested edits to clarify any confusion. And if you'd like, I can take questions before moving on to the next.
Heather, I don't have a question. This is Sharon from the board, but I appreciate the edits, and I really, really appreciate the thought that came into the mindfulness of them. So spot on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment regarding this change in language? We have no one in the room. Can we check with WebEx if there's any public comment?
We are open for public comment on the change in language. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And for our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... at the bottom, in order to find your hand. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment.
That the committee had, were to 2570.
We do have a request for comment from Ada Boone Hurl. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Multiple windows here. Thank you. I am looking at the 2570.18 with the educators at the end. And where I'm trying to delineate it is it's saying so I'm looking at the very bottom of page 1, an occupational therapist that is serving as an educator in an education program for occupational therapists, of course, must maintain that license. And then in the next page, occupational therapist assistant that's serving as an educator. Where my comment really is that I think that it might be considered to be more inclusive in all practitioner types. For example, in a program for occupational therapy assistants, we have both occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants serving. Now, perhaps I'm missing something here, but that's what jumped out. And there are a few occasions where an occupational therapy assistant can be can with higher degrees be teaching in an occupational therapy program. So I apologize if I've misunderstood something.
If I may respond?
Yes, please.
Okay, Ada, thank you very much. I know you always do such a good job and give us great feedback. I agree with you. And at the top of the page, in the second sentence in the sub H regarding OTs maintaining a current license, it does talk about OTs serving as an educator in an OTA program. I believe that same sentence should be duplicated and proposed to be added to I, so that it applies to an OTA, whether they are serving as an educator in a program for OTs or OTAs. So that's a good catch. I would just basically take that second sentence at the top of the page after "and active license." I would copy that, paste it after sub I. The OTA must maintain a current active license. And you say the licensure requirement also applies to an occupational therapy assistant that is serving as an educator in an education program for occupational therapists in California. I personally, I agree. That was a good catch.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that also affects me. I'm laughing. Thanks,
I know.
Ada.
Sharon, sorry. I know. When
Thank
she
you,
said how
Ada.
many degrees, I was like, that's Sharon.
Well, and I got all twisted up, so I needed to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding something. So I appreciate you all, and we've succeeded in practitioner inclusion. Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments?
That was our only request.
Thank you. So we have a proposal to add a sentence to that section that says, to section I,
Correct.
that says, the licensure requirement also applies to an occupational therapy assistant that is serving as an educator in an education program for occupational therapists in California. That's if it was, yeah. Okay.
Richard,
Yes,
Can I-
we have a comment from Christine Whittlesbach.
question. This might have to be in the future, but I thought we, at one point, we discussed perhaps, or maybe we didn't discuss it yet. Maybe we said we'd talk about it at a future meeting. But because now that we have virtual meetings, that we talked about perhaps deleting the requirement to have our meetings in the different cities in statute, Sacramento, Los Angeles, San Francisco. I don't know if that's something we want to do here or can do here, or I don't know, since this is going in.
So I agree with you in that you are correct. That is not in 2570.8, though it's in the next section.
Oh, right, okay.
And it was a future agenda item. That proposal is not included here because I don't, I think it was put onto a future agenda item. The board didn't have an actual vote about moving forward with that.
Gotcha, okay.
If on the fly, however, you all can come up with language, just like Ada pointed out, for us making sub 2570.18I better, you know, we're totally happy to do that. We can note the proposed edits to 2570.19 when we move on to that section.
Okay.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, why don't we look at that section? I mean, are we done with? Are we going to vote? Do we want to vote on these section by section, or do you want to vote for the whole language as a whole once we figure it out?
I prefer them individually only because staff
Yeah.
may make another recommendation the board doesn't agree with, and it would affect.
It's pretty complicated. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So why? So do we have a vote on the proposed changes to BPC section 2570.18? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that we accept these changes as well as the change that was discussed, proposed by Ada Boone Hurl. Hope I said that correctly. Yeah, that's my motion.
I second. This is Sharon
No,
Pavlovich.
no, we have Hector beat you to it.
Oh, thank you,
Sharon.
Hector.
Thank you, Hector. So we have a motion from Christine Wittelsbach, a second by Hector Cabrera. Any further board discussion? Hearing none, there's no public to comment. In person, how about on the WebEx? Do we have any public comment?
We have a motion and a second on the floor. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3. And for our mobile device users, you may need to hit the ellipses button. That's the ... in order to find the hand. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. We have a motion to modify section 2570.18. I'd like to call a vote.
Board Member Cabrera? Board Member Miller?
Yes.
Board Member Pavlovich?
Yes.
Board Member Whittlesbach?
Yes?
Secretary Doe, yes. Vice President Marcos? And President Bookwalter.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Moving on to Business and Profession Code, section 2570.19 in the packet. Heather Martin, could you explain this change?
Yes, please. If we could go to the next page, thank you very much. This was also a future agenda item that came up at the February meeting. I'm sorry, I took the liberty of adding it to this so that if the board in fact wanted to request that the sunset date push out, that there was time to do it rather than if it tried in August, it would be too late. And there's a small window left to propose this edit. Again, there's no guarantees, but that's why that's on this agenda in this setting. And above it, you can see the language where it talks about the requirement that the board hold one meeting annually in the cities of Sacramento, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. So the changes were not there. I was kind of waiting to see if there were any other bills that came out regarding amendments to the government code that would change the Bailey-Keene Open Meetings Act to see if maybe something else was done that didn't need us to do that, which is why I thought we had time. If the board wants to suggest something today, that's fine. We can ask at the same time if you agree with the push out year for sunset, and if not, certainly we can have it back on the agenda in August, and we can pursue a legislative proposal in January of 25. Any questions?
I have a question. So since we're working on this section, if we have it's a good idea to get in any changes we might want to make, such as removing the Sacramento, Los Angeles, and San Francisco meeting places. We should probably have a discussion about that before we move on.
Pardon me, moderator, could you go back one page and scroll to the bottom so you can see the last sentence on that page? So right now, the board shall meet and hold at least one regular meeting annually in the cities of, next page, please. And that's where the cities are specified at the top of the next page.
Yeah, I mean, the cities are unaffordable. San Francisco is pretty much unaffordable for meetings in terms of state rate hotels and locations. So we haven't really been fulfilling this because of expense. We're meeting in Oakland is not San Francisco. I mean, it's actually inaccurate if we're not meeting in San Francisco, or a neighboring community to Los Angeles. Or we generally do meet in Sacramento. So it's actually would be bringing it in to reality to change it in some way, just to remove that cities of
But more importantly, now we have WebEx, and so there's
Right.
really no need for this.
Wouldn't we just change cities to counties and move on?
I don't think we need to have locations at all because we have WebEx now.
Or we just.
We're very
spec-
accessible.
Or we specify Sacramento, Northern California, and Southern California.
But why? Why?
Well, one of the, well,
I think it needed to show that, right? If we go way back, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we were being accessible to all parts of the state of California. And the only way to do that is to show that we're looking at the mid, the high, and the low section for accessibility. Even though we have WebEx, I don't, you know what I mean? I thought, I could be wrong though.
Well, it was about, I'm sorry, can I talk?
yes.
It was about accessibility at the time that the law was written, but at that time, we didn't have this capability. Now we're accessible to everyone, everywhere, so.
Well, I'm not sure about that,
On
but anyway,
WebEx.
Heather Martin, you've got your hand up?
One of the thoughts is, I'm sorry, if you could go back one page again to the end of page 3, my apologies. I feel like the most simplest one would just be eliminating annually and say, hold at least one regular meeting in the cities up. Then you have the flexibility of all 3 cities and you're not for one meeting, and you don't have the requirement for one meeting in each city each year. If you don't want to take out the cities. I mean, that cities is pretty much replicated throughout many practice acts. I mean, obviously I don't know them all, but over the years, like, we've had a chance to glance and, we just look. And so maybe just saying one regular meeting in, and then you have the flexibility of 3 different cities. And again, not one meeting each year in each city. That might be just an easier, quicker fix to strike the word annually. And then on the top of the next page, maybe, because you have the whole quorum issue too, even if you in-person quorum with some members, remotely opting in. So I think it would be kind of hard to weave in the WebEx, but certainly if you eliminated the word annually, then you could meet in Riverside, San Jose, Redding, and LA. You just would only have to have one meeting in one of those 3 cities, and that might be an easier sell, for lack of a better word.
And if it were to move to WebEx, does that mean that board members have to provide their address of their location?
Not if there is a quorum of the board in a physical location.
Say that one more time, Heather. You cut it.
Not if there is a quorum of the board in one location. So for example, the quorum of the board is here in Sacramento, and Sharon is in Southern California, and her address is not on the agenda. Okay, so that would change though if we only had 3 people come to Sacramento and 4 people joined via WebEx, then everyone's address that was joining the meeting via WebEx would have to have their addresses on the agenda. But so my point is like the whole WebEx thing makes it kind of hard, but if you just propose to strike one word annually, then you've got the flexibility where you want to go as long as it's one of those 3 cities. And you only have to do it one meeting, which gives you 3 to 5 additional meetings to either join via WebEx or in a different location. Excuse me.
But was the discussion here that was amongst board members, is your comment to just do away with cities and in person and go to WebEx?
Well,
No, I don't want to
No.
do away with in-person meetings at all. I think
I
they're
didn't
very valuable.
suggest that.
No, Heather, I'm asking Christine for
Okay,
clarification.
pardon me.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of value in in-person meetings. I'm not in favor of only WebEx. I'm just saying that we're accessible to the public if they want to view us, if we're, because now we have this available.
but we don't have
Not
it
not
all.
everywhere. I understand.
Yeah,
It's not everywhere.
That's the key. So maybe
Yeah.
I do understand when they said a couple meetings in Southern California, a couple at Northern California, so then people can come if we don't have WebEx. I mean, when we have WebEx, yeah, that's not a problem, but that's not a setup that's going to happen all the time.
So then I would just like to go back to bringing forth the comment of why not just change the word to counties?
Well, San Francisco County and San Francisco City are exactly the same. They have exactly the same boundary, and we still can't afford to beat there. So that's the reason why counties would not work. I'll tell you that, because we should probably eliminate San Francisco and broaden the area to the whole Bay Area. But I also appreciate that we have, if you know, the more we diverge from language that everybody else is using, the harder it might be to get this through.
Right.
For the other part of this section that we're interested in getting through this year, Helen, feel free.
Hi.
Thank you.
So in looking at the practice acts, a lot of them have meetings shall be held in Northern and Southern California. So
Yeah.
that is typically a means by which to open it up to make sure that the entire state is covered. Also, there is an ability to have a quorum, say, in one location, and then an open meeting location that people can attend in the opposite location. So then that covers their requirements as well. So for example, if Dr. Pavlovich had been at an office or a library that was publicly accessible, that would have met our, I don't know if she's in LA, but we'll say she's in LA, our LA requirement. But I'm looking at just a search of the BNP code. And it looks like specifically I think probably because the order, but the health boards, but I'm looking at this one here that I just hit for something else. It says meetings are held, at least one in Southern and one in Northern. So that would be kind of template language we could also borrow.
So thank
As-
you for that.
As a Northern Californian, I like that one because LA tends to dominate in the Bay Area too. And I like having, there are some people who prefer physical access to a Northern California meeting, even though Northern California is so big. Anyway, I kind of like
I-
the language. Yeah.
You like the language of Northern California, Southern California. I agree with you. Yeah. And I don't know that you have to put a number to it. One here, one, but
Would
that would
that-
be up for those of you who are.
And they could be both if we're having a quorum in LA and 3 people in Northern California. Then you could have a hybrid meeting with people in San Francisco and or people in Oakland and 4 people in LA and 3 people in Oakland. That could work. So
Right.
satisfy. Does that? I mean, do we have I would move that the board shall.
Who's the third person in Northern?
There isn't. There's only 2 in Northern California right now.
I know. Well,
That was my suggestion in the first place, that we do Northern and Southern California.
Well, all of staff is in Northern California.
Yeah,
Does that
true.
count for the quorum, though?
Yeah, does that count quorum?
It, even though I live in Southern California, it's much easier for me to get up here than it is to get to LA, to be honest with you. So
Yeah. It
sometimes
is.
it doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't matter.
and then annually, would it be annually, or do you still want to remove annually, Heather? If we do Northern and Southern.
I think you have more flexibility to go to San Diego or Redding or Santa Rosa and go to Dominican, if you only require one of your meetings being held, there. What if you wanted all the meetings in LA and only have one in Sacramento? I just think removing the annually, if you do Northern and Southern California, I guess I'm just asking Helen, which practice act says that? Because I know a lot still have this exact language. So if she could suggest that, then I can certainly ask committee, I can point out to committee staff those sections.
Certainly. And like I
or-
said, just a text search. Here's 2709, which is nursing. 2611, which is physical therapy. State bar.
It's okay. If the board wants to
But
go,
yeah,
then you
here,
can
take
share
a
that
look.
with me offline. We don't have to, it's getting late in the
Can
day.
I ask- Can I ask Helen, is it one meeting annually in Northern and Southern, or is it just one meeting in Northern and Southern?
So it looks like it'll say things like, for example, let me pull up the nursing one. The board shall meet at least 3 times a year, meeting at least once calendar year in Northern and once in Southern.
Once in Southern.
And we have another one where it says 3 meetings or one meeting per 3 months. and at least one meeting must be in Northern and what's in South. So we could change it to say, a minimum of 3 or 4 meetings or whatever we normally do, at least one in each.
Do we want to iron that out right here?
Sure, let's do it really quick.
The board,
Why? Oh, go ahead.
because we want to get the 2028 in. We want, and that's part of the same.
And
thing.
Heather's message was August will be too late. Is that what you said? I mean, we can work on it, but we might not. You can do whatever you want.
Well, Heather, talk to us about, could you talk to us about the timeline for this section?
Yes, so moderator, could you please go to the prior agenda item 19, and on page slides 2 and 3 on the PDF. I'm not sure what numbers they are on yours, but item 19 at the beginning had the legislative calendar.
Oh, yes.
And just right directly after
That's
that.
also in the first page, Hector, of our section on legislation.
The page, do you have the page following that? Or maybe we didn't have, oh, there we go. Thank you. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
we have it.
And so right there, so we're, the deadline for bills to get, oh, sorry, next page, please.
Second, the other side of the page, yeah.
Right, we've got that June deadline.
There.
Sorry, July 3rd deadline, last day for policy committees to meet and report on bills. And last day for fiscal, so in August 16th. So I think it would be, that's kind of why I thought about I put the year in for consideration at this meeting. And if the board wanted to do that for the amending the other meetings, if you either can come up the time or language today, or in the interest of time, cover it in August and we could get legislation introduced in January. Unless you're willing to hammer out language today and make a motion so that I can contact staff and try to get these amendments into a bill, we may not meet this deadline.
Okay, so if we want to just do the date of change from 2027 to 2028, we can do that and it could get in by August. Because if we do more, we might want to hold off until doing it next year in a separate bill. If we don't want to make a decision today about that.
I think we should just knock it out.
Okay.
President Bookwalter, if you'd like, I can share my screen with the language from physical therapy.
Great.
Perfect.
That'd be great. Can
Know
we
what I
have
lost it?
Helen Jo Freech share her screen?
Am I able to share?
Yes, yes, you are.
I'm gonna share. Okay. So it says the board shall meet at least 3 times each calendar year, meeting at least once each calendar year in Northern California and once each calendar year in Southern California. We currently have the language that says the board may convene from time to time. Oh, wait, sorry. Special meetings of the board may be held at any time and place as the board may designate. That's current statute.
I like the wording.
I do too.
I do 3.
Yeah.
It's easy.
I move to replace our language with in BPC 2570.19 with section G, the first sentence, the board shall hold at least one regular meeting annually in the cities of Sacramento, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and replace it with the board shall meet at least 3 times each calendar year, meeting at least once each calendar year in Northern California and once each calendar year in Southern California, period.
I second it.
Great. Any board discussion on that?
Did you say 3 times a year?
Yeah, that's what
At least 3.
At least 3.
which is what we have currently. Any other board discussion? Any concerns about that, Denise? 3 times a year?
I'm voting no, so it
Okay.
doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
My concerns
Sharon?
don't matter.
Sharon? They matter, but they might get outvoted though, yeah.
No, I mean, you're not going to get consent. It's more of a technical reason than, it's not that I disagree with where this board's trying to go. I always support that.
That's the technical reason.
I don't think that I don't think that we've actually seen the other language. I know we heard from our attorney on the other language. I would like board to bring back language like that and for us to be making language decisions, looking at other practice acts. We have the time if we didn't have so because we have the time, I would like to make suggestions to staff, have them bring it back. But again, I'm going to defer on
Okay.
that. So it's a technical issue on the language.
Well,
That's
no,
all it
you
is
might be
for me.
persuading another board member, so that's good it's good to have your opinion on that.
And then
And understand.
reducing it to 3, I want to understand. And then the other third piece is Heather was looking for, I thought I heard her say she was looking to see if there was certain passage on a bill package about the meetings. And I do think as we're now fully out of COVID, as a budget's going to be passed with DCA, why not match I mean, or not a DCA, the budget will come out. I mean, there may be more
Something may
information
be coming down the pike.
that's
Yeah.
coming down the pike. That's
Gotcha.
my only reasons, 3.
Okay. No, that's good. Any other, I mean, the board might want to reflect on your comments. Sharon, do you have any comments? All right, we have a motion and to use borrow the PT language about Northern and Southern California and replace our language with that regarding the meeting places. To paraphrase, do we have any public comment? We have no public here, public comment online. David, can you help us?
We are open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button. For our mobile device users, please hit the ellipses button, the dot, 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 if you're having trouble finding your hand button. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. We have a motion and a second to alter the language about locations for meetings. I'd like to call a vote.
Board Member Cabrera? Board Member Miller?
No,
Board Member Palovich?
Yes.
Board Member Whittlesbach?
Yes.
Secretary Dow, yes. Vice President Marcos? And President Bookwalter.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Did we also need to make a motion we also need to make a motion for the other modification to BPC section 2570.19 to change the date of section K from 2027 to 2028. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we replace in BBC section 2570.19 in section K, that we replace 2027 with 2028.
Do we have a second?
I second. This is Sharon.
This time we'll give it to Sharon. Hector and Sharon, it was a dead heat. We have a motion to change. Do we have any board discussion? No public comment in person? Do we have moderator? Could we ask the public online if they have a concern about or comment on that?
We are open for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, raise a hand by tapping that hand button. For our mobile device users, please hit the ellipses button if you're having trouble finding your hand button. That's the dot, dot, dot at the bottom of your screen. And cycle through one of 3 pages to find the hand. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. Would like to call a vote on the motion to change 2570.19 section K.
Board Member Cabrera? Board Member Miller?
yes,
Board Member Pavlovich,
Yes.
Board Member Whitlisbach,
Yes.
Secretary Doe, yes. Vice President Marcos,
Yes.
and President Bookwalter.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Moving on to Business and Profession Code, Section 2570.32. Heather Martin, can you introduce those changes to us?
Yes, so similar to the other ones, the bold yellow highlight underline is proposed new text, and then the green strikeout. If you don't mind, can you go to the next page, please? If you see the proposal would strike subsections C, D, and E in green and replace it with only one section that would be the yellow underline text. So we have one section that would basically replace three different sections, be consistent with the government code, yet less restrictive, allowing the board to hear or to consider written argument rather than what's the other phrase? It's on the other page. I'm sorry.
Rather than public hearing or public?
Rather than rather than providing the opportunity to present oral documentary evidence and argument to the board. So again, I'm sorry, this is it's a page break in a bad place, but at the end of sub C is the section, it's actually on the last line on the prior page, excuse me, that talks about given the opportunity. Oh, sorry, I gotta scroll down. So given the petitioner and the AG an opportunity to present oral documentary evidence to the board rather than allowing the consideration of oral or written argument, will be less restrictive. Further down on that page, actually it's further down, but I copied the section and I put the rationale. And since Helen is the one who proposed this language, we worked on this a couple of different times, she may have more thoughts on that.
Yes, could we, Helen, do you have, do you want to talk about this?
Certainly. So as Executive Officer Martin says, when your Practice Act was adopted, it was adopted with a very strict method in order to hear petitions for before the board, which would include petitions for reinstatement, petitions to reduce penalties. It is stricter than the standards in the Administrative Procedure Act. So Section 11522 provides for, as she was mentioning, either an oral hearing or a written argument. And in a written argument, the petitioner would provide all the documentation they wished and perhaps a letter to the board, as would the Deputy Attorney General, rather than having one appear and perform arguments. And then the board would go into closed session and review the written record and make a decision at that time. So this would reduce the restrictions that are currently in the Practice Act and bring them into the default of the Administrative Procedure Act, which is more flexible, especially cost-wise.
Okay. So this language is consistent with the Administrative Procedures Act.
It is.
As it is currently. Okay.
I have a question. Do any of the current boards require petitioners to appear in public still?
So I know that we do have several boards that do have strict language very similar to yours. I do know that the Board of Accountancy has the flexibility, but only recently decided to utilize it. They were just as a board, their particular vibe was to always see the petitioner and have them present. And COVID actually threw them for a loop, and even then they could be virtual. So, but they also had a petition that was incredibly simplistic that they could have done on the record. And so, but they just never used that process or built one. And so they now built in that process for an option. But that's the default. So when a Practice Act is silent, it goes to the APA, which provides this process.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, do most of the healing arts boards where people are working with people, accountancy is a little bit different. Healing arts boards, do they require their petitioners to appear in public or in person?
I wouldn't have that information. And of course, each board might differ depending upon the flavor of the board or restrictions, et cetera. But this would allow us to have the option, but not necessarily exercise it. So if the board would only prefer to see people in person and have an oral hearing, then that can absolutely be done.
So it would be up to the board, not the petitioner.
Correct.
Okay.
This is an issue that came up recently when we had a stipulated settlement and a petition hearing that we heard yesterday. Previous previous boards have had the option of making a change and have decided not to do that. We don't have to, this is a decision that we could consider more thoroughly at a later date if we don't want to discuss it today. I do want to, I hate to do this, but we have people who are leaving on planes in less than 2 hours.
Yeah.
And we need to finish up. And I'm not sure we have time to fully address this issue. I would propose that we discuss this at another board meeting, and we may also need to accept the report of the executive officer's written report and rather than an oral, unless there's anything pressing. And also, anyway, but that's another issue. Would it be okay if we discuss this at a later meeting, at another meeting?
Yeah.
Change.
I
regarding-
I'd
move-
like to.
I move that we table the discussion.
Table it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need a second for a tabling?
No, you
Next
have
table.
flexibility over the agenda.
Okay. And then the update on the planned communications plan, we can also, do we want to table that as well?
We can table that. I move to table it.
Move to table. Executive officers report. We can consider, we have the printed materials in the report to review. Is there anything urgent in the executive report,
sir.
Heather Martin? No?
You need a
Yes,
motion
sir.
to accept?
Nope.
So
Do we need to do public comment regarding any of these issues, tabling those two items?
you don't need-
Or about the executive officer's report?
Heather has her hand up.
Yes, Heather Martin, please.
If tabling is fine, but you asked if people, so just let me know if you want that included in the next meeting in August. We could do that quarter and the last quarter, if you would like, just basically take all those items. Or if you're asking that people just simply read it, and then if they have questions, then we just need a little bit more direction. I don't want to shortchange you, but I don't want to, do more than you're asking.
The
Thank you for
tabling
that.
of the are you talking about the communications plan in item number 21?
I'm actually talking about both of them. My report, 21 and 22. Unless you were just going to breeze through this and ask anyone.
Oh, 21 and 22, yeah. So we invite the board members to send comments on 21 and 22 directly to Heather Martin.
Oh,
No, we're
no.
tabling 21. 22, I think we can accept her report as presented to us. But let's table the future agenda items. Of course, we discuss that every meeting anyways. Unless there's something that we need to discuss for the next agenda item, but that's up to you.
Usually we open that also up for public comment.
Okay.
So if we table, I recognize we're tabling the executive officer's report and we're submitting comments. If we do have comments, I guess I'd just like to know if we do have comments or questions and the executive officer feels so moved that in her August report, she'd like to bring those back and share with the board, she would be free to do so, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I'm good. I'm good with the direction.
So we're tabling 21, but board members are welcome to make comments directly to the executive officer if they see something that should change between now and our next meeting. We're going to accept, do we have a motion to accept 22, the report? We don't usually do a motion to accept it. It's just a report. So
Right.
I don't think we really need a motion to accept it. And then 23, strategic planning dates. I think we do need to talk about that just really briefly. Heather Martin, do we need to talk about that today?
Yes, please. Yes, please. I'm sorry.
What, you were going to check into available dates
Uh-huh.
and let us
Yep,
know.
so I think there is there a calendar provided?
There
It's
is.
a regular calendar.
It's just December and January. It's blank
Right.
calendars.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So, looking forward, the previously the board has always had a 2-day strategic planning session. January is open right now. So in consideration of the January 1st and January 20th holidays, and I recognize that at the August meeting, the 2025 meeting dates will be selected. I was hoping folks would check their availability January 9, 10, 23, 24, and 30, 31.
Heather, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Since Denise and I will not be here, I mean, do you need that input from us because, or should we recuse ourselves, or are there other people coming in? Because is the urgency December? Because if it's January, I don't want to have say in something that, you know what I mean?
So you're already going to have that meeting on December 5th. I didn't, we provided December in case something came up about January, but yes, if folks wanted to meet December 12th or 13th, we could see, I can just send an email real quick. I'm sorry, I just don't have the notes about that date, but we're not trying to exclude you by any means. That's
Oh, no, no.
not the intent.
No, and that wasn't the message. The message was, you know, I want to honor whatever the future people and, you know, that are in line to come in, and then plus the existing board, and don't want to give input where it, you know, it doesn't matter for in January, you know what I mean?
We won't
Yeah,
give
well, I
input for
thought-
January board
Right.
member
I had
comment.
thought, right, I thought January would be good so that my successor could be a part of that process. That's originally why we had talked about January.
Yeah, I agree that we should do it in January because we're going to be interviewing and we don't want to be coming to Sacramento 2 weeks in a row, right? No, I mean, I will, but I'm talking about my Southern California colleagues that, you know, for planning purposes, I don't think they want to be coming to Sacramento 2 weekends in a row. So I think we should.
The only, only thing to consider, Lena, is that you might possibly run in January a strategic planning session with 4 board members. So that's the trade-off.
And the new executive director.
They might not be here by January either, so.
Yeah.
So maybe we won't be having a strategic planning session until February.
It's not contingent really on the executive officer. The board sets the strategic direction of which you would give that direction to the executive officer. So, you know, if I had to weigh in, I think the board input on strategic planning is, you know, if I had to pick between the two, is supersedes the executive officer.
It's important, but then we're gonna, I mean, I don't know, I mean, personally, 2 weeks in a row of coming to Sacramento, I mean, it depends on people's work commitments and you're hitting the holidays and all that stuff. So I'm just being respectful of people's time. I know that it would be only 4 board members doing a strategic plan, but you know, that's also timing issues regarding.
There's also a question about whether it's a 1 or a 2-day strategic planning format, because apparently they have both options. And with a smaller group, the one day might be better, but I mean, Heather Martin's got her hand raised.
Thank you. I did want to clarify, one of the reasons that I had suggested January is not because I don't want to participate, but I thought that having the new person participate would be a tremendous learning curve for them to hear the interactions. So I wanted to share that. And also as a reminder, when we talked about this in both at the meetings in December and in February, the whole goal is to have somebody new start January 2nd. That is the goal. I'm very optimistic about that. You know, I carefully plan things, and I just don't think that you're going to have any challenges finding a person in December and having them start in January. So that's my input. You know, you all do what you want, but I wanted to just share you. I think there's value in letting this new person hear all the dialogue that goes into that strategic planning process.
Now, Heather, you said you floated January 9, 10, 23, 24, and 30, 31
Correct.
as 3 different
Those
weeks.
dates are available currently.
Okay.
So, you know, excluding those that are in their grace year, the availability of everyone else, and, you know, again, it might be 5, or, you know, it could be a full board of 7.
I mean, if we wanted to do it at the end of I mean, I'm okay with all those dates personally. So anything,
In the end of
the
January.
end might be good because the person has a chance
Yes.
to put their pencils in a cup on the table before they have a strategic planning meeting. So I was just, but that would just be, but if it's not available by the time we get to them, then, you know, we could go earlier. 9 and 10 seems a little soon.
Yeah.
Yes, and let me remind you, I got appointed in mid-October of 2005, and in 2 weeks had my first board meeting and my first OTAC conference. Didn't even have a computer at the time. So
Yeah.
the people are flexible. Like, you know, we're so much more technology advanced than, you know, them then, but certainly getting someone to, you know, on board, have a computer, learn your names, etc. You know,
Yeah,
I-
they might have a password by January 30th.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Do people object to that strategy, is going backwards in January till we find one that sticks? Okay,
Fine.
that sounds great. We still, any public comment on that? I don't think the public has much to say about strategic planning sessions of the board, but well, let's open it up. I'd like to open it to public comment for the agenda items. Listing of future agenda items. And so maybe we could, any public comments on either of those two we'll take.
We are open for public comment via WebEx for future agenda items and other agenda items. If you would like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. For our mobile device users, please raise a hand by finding the ellipses button, the dot, 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 and cycling through pages until you find your hand button. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Thank you, moderator. The board, are we done with the listing of future agenda items? Do we need to discuss that? We can just put it off till next meeting? Yeah. No board discussion? Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn carries. Okay, thank you. The board meeting concludes at 3:52.